Linda Fox in the Phocuswire studio at the Phocuswright Conference, and I am joined by Manuel Hilty of Nezasa and Andrew Boch of Mobi.AI. Welcome to the studio, guys. Really great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to talk about personalization. Hopefully we're going to talk about the evolution of personalization and itinerary building and obviously AI. So let's just start with the connected trip evolution. Personally, I hate that expression because it's very cliched now. But Manuel, you start. How is, the ability to bundle elements of a trip together evolving, would you say?
Well, I think it's something that's so complex that for a long time in the industry, all of that has been done manually. And I think technology is getting to a point where more and more of this process can actually be successfully automated. There's still a long way to go to really do everything end to end, which is not only a technology problem, but also a collaboration and adoption problem in the end.
Yeah. But presumably, technologies like APIs have helped enormously in all of this. And then, AI as well. Andrew, you must be seeing, leaps now, whereas we used to see sort of small incremental improvements.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the changing consumer expectations is also a big portion of that, right? Like, as consumers are starting their travel, talking to LLMs, sort of doing that initial planning layer there, but their expectation about, what type of context is going to be preserved from place to place, that they already are now talking to something that can kind of understand their whole trip. And I think everything downstream of that begins to need to have that same type of awareness.
Yeah, because you're beginning to talk about context aware. As part of the evolution of the connected trip. So talk us through that.
So we really kind of look at it as like, we think of a connected trip sometimes as feeling a bit top down, that everything kind of plugs into this module and here's your hotel and here's your, flight. And here's...
Sort of a bit formulaic.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas we think that, when you're changing your flight, that should be aware of what your hotel plans were, and it should be aware of what the purpose of your trip was. Like when you're staying at a hotel, the hotel should know why you're there. That sort of context should be preserved throughout the travel experience. And fundamentally, all of the downstream suppliers need some method of both understanding that context, ingesting that context, and then hopefully acting on that context.
Because we've had businesses, startups around that haven't taken off. They've had partners like Marriott and Hilton, and they've talked about exactly that, joining the dots so that if your plane arrives late, it all happens, it all updates itself, and the experience becomes completely frictionless. Again, another sort of cliche. But do you think we are now within sort of touching distance of that kind of trip, Manuel?
I think we are. I think a lot of elements are there, but one of the reasons why those startups didn't succeed is there's still, the whole problem is just extremely complex, and you have to break it down, and everybody of us has to solve a different piece of the problem. Mobi, for example, is more top of funnel, where people are trying to figure out what they want to do with a lot of high quality data to support those decisions, whereas we focus more on connecting this to kind of the infrastructure layer and taking those recommendations and make sure that the trip becomes operable and preserving all of the context that Andrew talked about. So I don't think that one startup can solve the whole connected trip. That's just it's not realistic. But I think we now, with a few players together, have a lot of the pieces that now can be put together in a way that we're getting much closer to this famous connected trip.
Because you mentioned collaboration. Are we getting better at it? Because we always talk about, we tend to work in silos, and we tend to be kind of over competitive when we could be a bit more sharing. Are we getting a bit better?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, I think like the overarching technology is sort of allowing that to be mediated. Like, because users are starting by talking to an LLM, they don't have the same type of lock-in, right? Like, as a consumer, do I want to be at hotel brand X's sort of mercy in terms of what they connect to? Maybe not, right? Like, I want that hotel room to be aware of everything else that I'm doing. But I think people do trust the LLMs in a particular way, like when they're doing that planning.
Keep your microphone.
To do that planning, to really sort of be that connected layer. And they sort of obviate the user acquisition problem, right? Like, a lot of startups have kind of cracked their teeth on a connected trip, because how do you get the users to begin with? And I think the LLMs have the users, and so now companies like Nezasa, companies like Mobi can help facilitate the downstream effects of that in order to be able to sort of empower the brands, empower the users to actually make that connected idea real,
So consumers really are going to drive us to be better.
Partly, but I think partly it's just also technological evolution in all the different areas and pieces. I think interoperability doesn't even have to be very difficult if everybody does their homework on an API and data layer. Then with the tools we have today, it's actually quite simple to put things together. But the individual problems are the hard pieces to solve. And then, of course, there needs to be the willingness to actually work together and provide a solution together.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, let's talk about personalization. I'm always a bit skeptical because I always think that I'm, on every trip is very different. So how are we, can we, because in fact, we're not just talking about personalization. Now we're also talking about hyper personalization. Is it really possible, do we think?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think there's a shift in sort of the incentive structure for personalization that we've just not seen before. I think it's very much consumer led in that the consumers get more value out of the LLMs if the LLMs know more about them, right?
Yeah.
My ChatGPT is better because I turn on memory and it knows things about me. Whereas that wasn't inherently true, I think, in a previous generation. Most people don't travel 6-7 times a year. They travel 2-3 times a year. And so probably not always in the exact same brand configuration and everything else. So how much value you got by storing your personalized data with a Marriott or a Hilton or an American Airlines or what have you was lower. But now that all that data can be stored and moved between all of those different providers, I think the incentive for sharing your personal information is higher, the value that you get from it is greater, and the system's capacity downstream to actually sort of ingest that personalization is, I think, the thing that we're both working on now.
I would actually even say I'm not sure whether it always needs personalization or maybe also just customization, easy customization. Because when I travel, I could travel alone, I could travel with my wife, with the whole family, with friends. It's always a different
on business,
setting.
Leisure, for both. Yeah.
And each time there is something else to know, or maybe I want to do something completely different, or I want to stay within my habits. So maybe I also just need a way to express what I'm looking for. And then a system that actually surfaces me something that corresponds to what I just said. And maybe I don't even have to store my preferences with a system. I just need a way to easily formulate what I want now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just sticking with personalization, certainly Phocuswright research is showing that it's the younger generations that are very happy, as you say, to give up their data. And my children, absolutely, it's not an issue for them, and it's older generations. Are we going to drag the older generations along with us just because if our kids are doing it, well, it necessarily means we will do it as well?
I think it's all about the value trade-off, right? Like most people I know use Gmail. I don't even think that's generational at this point. And like the trade-off there has been like a substantial loss of privacy in a kind of macro sense. But Gmail is a really great product. So I think it's a question of, is the value delivered by the sharing of the data going to increase enough? And I think that's going to pull people more than just any specific generational shift. It's like if we give good things when we share data, or if we get good things when we share data, like we'll be willing to share more of it.
Yeah. Okay. Where is AI so far feeding into kind of itinerary building, packaging of the goods together, of the goods and services together? Where so far is it making a big impact?
I think the biggest impact is probably at generating more demand for packaging and actually booking whole itineraries, because I think what's most transformed today, or being most transformed, is the search layer. Like up to a while ago, people went on Google search to search for a hotel or a flight. And now they ask whatever AI tool, like I have 1 week, 2 weeks, I want to go there. What should I do? So in the end, they don't get a suggestion for a product, but for a trip. And I think this for me is probably the most fundamental shift in this whole context, because it drives demand. And it means we now have to meet this demand. And then, of course, it also gives us, like all of us, more capabilities to meet that demand and to make it bookable, make it manageable, and all of these things, like on a lot of levels, in software development, in actually building individual agents that do certain tasks in this whole process. But I think that the top of funnel shift is probably the most important at this point in time, because it means that all of that actually is very meaningful.
Yeah, it's the kind of it's the one that's the most obvious. It's most in our face, isn't it? The changes, as you say, at the top of the funnel. Yeah. Okay, agentic. How far do you think that the industry is ready for agentic AI?
I think maybe it's a question of how quickly the users are going to make it such that they have to
right,
be,
you
right?
think they're going to drive, yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I look back at my time at Hopper, and I remember a moment in time when, you know, we would talk to people and they would say, oh, only young people will buy plane tickets on their phone. And now I think everybody looks at that as a thing that they'll do. And so I think the minute people begin to have trusted commercial interactions with the LLM, the first time they try maybe something small, you know, like go buy a pair of shoes or go buy X, and that works seamlessly and they get the thing that they wanted. If it's a good user experience, people will do more of it, because fundamentally, like, entering your credit card and address information into a form isn't like fun or a good use of time. So I think if the agents can do it competently and securely, people will begin to use them to do that, and that trust will build the same way any relationship does.
Manuel, you talked about, you know, how that big impact of AI on the top of the funnel search. Do you also see it filtering down through other elements as we go forward?
Yes, and I think especially agentic AI, you will also find it on other layers, right? All of us will have basically portions of our system that are transformed into agents that then collaborate with other systems or other parts of the system. So in the end, I think it's a big architectural or structural change that will go through all the layers in the end. Some pieces of our travel tech architecture will be agents. Other pieces will be tools being invoked by those agents. I think we're all still figuring out how exactly that's going to look like, but I think it will go through everything in the end. Yeah.
This feels like quite a big question, but how are we going to really kind of move the needle on making travel less frictionless, remove some of that friction? Is it, AI? Is it the whole trust thing at the top of the funnel? Is it something else? What are we going to do?
To remove friction from travel in general, I think.
Yeah,
I think that top of the funnel piece is really important, because we now understand the intent, like why somebody is traveling, what do they want to get out of the experience. And then I think as we begin to kind of move further down the layers towards delivery, the more awareness that propagates down, I think the better service experiences we're going to be able to provide to people. And so I think as technology providers, we're trying to enable first parties who are actually doing that service delivery to have all the tools at their disposal to be able to service guests in the best way possible. And I think that's, understanding why it is that somebody wants to do something and then helping facilitate that is, I think, the best way to get that friction out of the system.
Yeah. Do you worry, as relatively kind of new companies, that your moats are being taken away because it's just this rapid pace of change that we're seeing? Do you kind of get concerned about staying on top of that pace of change?
Well, everybody should be concerned of that.
Yeah.
I think any CEO, whether it's a small or a large company, who is not kind of secretly paranoid is doing something wrong, right? So we all have to, I think there was a case before, you always had to reassess periodically, are we doing the right thing? Are we like increasing the moat? Is it decreasing? I think now just the frequency at which you have to reevaluate everything is just going up. And there's still a lot of ways how to build moat, and some of them won't be easily disrupted by AI, but yes, you have to constantly ask yourself that question.
I also look at it as like the change is the moat for us. Like for the large companies that we work with, like they don't want to wake up every morning and find out that they've been building on quicksand. And so they can kind of offload that to us. And we're thinking about every day a very, very rapidly changing environment, and being smaller and more nimble, we can respond faster to that. So to some degree, like, does it make our day-to-day lives more difficult? Like 100%. But does it actually kind of create a commercial opportunity for us? I also think 100%.
Right. So they can sell holidays and you can worry about the integration, the tech in the background.
Totally. If everything wakes up tomorrow and there's a new protocol, like you have to believe that, and you want to partner with companies who are staying up at night wondering if that's going to happen and having plans for when it does. And so you can offload those pieces to us. And I think fundamentally that's a type of moat.
Yeah. Interesting that you say, we wake up tomorrow and there's a new protocol. I mean, that is quite likely, isn't it? We could wake up tomorrow and there'll be a new protocol.
Yeah.
Or something else.
Yeah.
Do you sort of sit there thinking, I'm going to ask, both of you think about this question. what is it going to be this week? You know, today it's Google and, you know, agentic booking with Google. Last week it was, I don't know, it was PayPal and Booking.com. But you know what I mean? It's so fast moving. Do you sort of sit there and think what it might be? Do you try and predict what might be coming?
Well, I think, first of all, the examples you just mentioned, these were all manifestations of a trend we already saw.
Sure.
But then again, you can always be completely surprised, right? I think I try to not spend too much time thinking about what's going to be next because I don't know. But I try to spend enough time thinking about what can we anticipate already, right? Reevaluating all of that. Where can we provide value? Where can we do something that others can't? Where can we make our customers more successful? So these are questions we frequently try to think about. And if you do that, then you will also be quicker and better in reacting to the change you cannot foresee, because some of that change will happen. But as we don't, like, it's an unknown, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't worry too much about it. You should deal with it when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of time thinking about sort of like what the underlying incentive structures are, because I think those don't move as much. And so the technology changes and like the specific protocol may change. But like if we look at something like MCP, like it's a reaction to the fact that the LLMs need access to real-time data, and that the way that they're fundamentally built doesn't allow for that. And web scraping has been their sort of first move. You know, MCP is their next, but we kind of look and say, all right, like that underlying need is always there. What are other ways that people might try and service it in the future? And also, how can we best service that need at a given moment in time in support of our partners?
Okay. As we wrap up, just want to ask you both, as we all kind of think about agentic and, you know, some beginning to move towards agentic, where do you see differentiation coming? How will travel companies differentiate?
I think in the end, a lot of it will be product and service. Because this, like, not travel tech, but travel companies, right? I think for travel companies, a lot of it will be product and service.
Yeah.
There is something that, in the end, consumers and AI agents need to find with you that others can't. So I think as a travel company, this should probably be the first question to ask. And then when you know which product and service you want to provide, then you need the right technology for it.
Because we're not going to have the sort of websites as our shop fronts. Or in all likelihood, we're not going to have the websites as our shop fronts. So, you know, you don't have that nice, potentially user experience, that nice slick feel, because it's going to be originating somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think differentiation is still going to be most valuable at the actual point of service delivery, right? Like if the product that you're delivering is differentiated, I think that's a key portion of it. And I think the piece next to that is the more awareness that you have built into the system, the richer your connectivity is into the broader ecosystem, the better you're going to be able to understand your consumer, and the better you're going to be able to make that point of service delivery really exceptional and differentiated.
Great. Andrew, Manuel, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.